This basically confirms the Boston Bruins rebuild, as Don Sweeney has spoken out about some of the Boston Bruins' main issues here in this season. And this is, once again, not what Boston Bruins fans wanted to hear, as he provided some crucial updates going forward with this season. And you guys are going to want to stick around and hear what we have. Before we get into this very, very quickly, we're on the road to 6K. We know 70% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot for all your Bruins news, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button, join me here on the channel. We're covering everything Boston Bruins just like this, and we're going to have a very busy 2 weeks heading towards this trade deadline with the news that Don Sweeney dropped today. Starting off with, of course, Hampus Lindholm is unlikely to return this season. He suffered a fractured patella and had surgery. Now, dating back to, just about October, November when Hampus Lindholm went out with an injury, he was week to week for about the entire season. And we remember when Jim Montgomery was still head coach, he was saying, yeah, he'll be back soon, week to week. Joe Sacco comes in, week to week still, and now Don Sweeney has spoken out that Hampus Lindholm is unlikely to return this season. It was only the other day I was speaking about Hampus Lindholm and how important it will be to get him back on this team, help out with Brandon Carlo, and help this defense get locked down with the return of Charlie McAvoy as well. That plan is now completely out the window, as we are no longer going to see Hampus Lindholm here in this season. And with the likes of that, with the uncertainty of what Charlie McAvoy is going through, and I will touch on that a bit in a minute as well, Don Sweeney also spoke about that. This confirms that there needs to be a rebuild in Boston. Whether or not it's going to be a rebuild, a retool, a rejig, whatever Cam Neely has been calling it, it is time now that this needs to happen. Because when we look at this defense right here, this is what we're going to be seeing for the foreseeable future. And it was in the other video as well that I mentioned that this is not feasible. Whether the Bruins are going to have to make a trade, and I've mentioned that kind of working around that would have to be the Hampus Lindholm injury, the Charlie McAvoy injury, depending how long those guys would be out. But now we know it's probably the worst case scenario for at least one of them. Charlie McAvoy is still yet to be uncertain, still yet to be a date to return, an estimated return date. So for the foreseeable future, who knows, could be until the playoffs, we're looking at this defense. And this defense is not a playoff defense. When we're looking at Michael Callahan, when we're looking at Andrew Peeke on the first line, great defensemen, but not at the level they're playing at right now. They need to play better, and that's nothing to do with them. That is just, unfortunately, the way that the cookie has crumbled in this case. And when we're looking at Hampus Lindholm as well, I mentioned that it's going to be an integral piece of him coming back, not just for the left side of this defense, to have him, Zadorov, and Mason Lohrei back, but as well as Brandon Carlo. Brandon Carlo has not played well since the absence of Hampus Lindholm, and now we're going to be seeing Brandon Carlo at the same rate we have all season long. So expect trades to happen, and I will once again in a minute here get into what Don Sweeney kind of had to say about that topic, because it's very interesting compared to what we've been kind of seeing from him before, and pretty similar to what we've been hearing. But let's move on as well to Charlie McAvoy. Don Sweeney said he's doing better, adds that there is no timeline for an expected return. So once again, a lot of uncertainty here surrounding the defense. Whether or not Charlie McAvoy will be back at all this season is in question now because of what we've seen with Hampus Lindholm. Reports are kind of saying that there was no setback for Hampus Lindholm. It was more so just taking longer to heal up than what normally would have happened. But unfortunately, that happens now and then. But Charlie McAvoy is certainly another interesting one where injured in the Four Nations face-off, the same shoulder he had surgery on, an infection that had to be cut open to be flushed out. And that is going to take some time to be returned. We saw from clips in the U.S. locker room that he had a sling on and had that arm up in a sling. And, that really kind of just adds more fuel to the fire about the extent of it, what is going to happen in that sense of things. But right now, no expected return date for Charlie McAvoy. So looking at this defense, this is what we're going to be looking at for the foreseeable future. But as we go into it as well, Don Sweeney touching on the trade topics. He notes that the Bruins have been aggressive in years past during the deadlines, as they will look at all opportunities this year, including potentially eye towards the future. So the fact that Don Sweeney now kind of saying that, we don't really know what we're going to be buyers or sellers, don't really know what's going to happen. He didn't mention that this time, but having a look at all opportunities, including an eye towards the future, really tells me that this team is abandoning this year. They're waving the white flag. They're putting it out there that this team right now is not going anywhere. We're looking at this team not heading towards the playoffs, and what we're looking at is the build for the next year and the next few years. And with the free agents that this team has, I will touch on in a minute, be pretty ready to see these guys traded. And I've kind of been anticipating this for a while now. More and more the Bruins have started to lose, the more and more I've kind of accepted terms to that. And as we kind of progress down to these forwards right here, as you see, quite a few UFAs. There's one realistically that I think we are going to for sure re-sign, which is Brad Marchand, which Don Sweeney also spoke about here, and I'll have that quote in a few minutes for you. There would be a few that I would love to see re-signed, one being Justin Brazeau, another being Morgan Geekie, but other than that, I really don't see any of these guys potentially being on this team by season's end. The Bruins are going to be looking to add assets they have now. They have that first-round pick they have this year, their own. Look to tank. That's the reason that teams get so good is, when you fully embrace the tank, when you fully embrace the rebuild, teams get well at that quick. Unfortunately, the Montreal Canadiens are a prime example of that. We saw what happened after they lost in the Stanley Cup final, fully accepted terms of a rebuild, and right now they're on a very, very quick pace of becoming a very good team. They're not that yet, but it won't be too much longer until they surpass some of these Atlantic teams, and the Bruins are, 3/4 there without even doing a rebuild. If they just do a retool, focus on a bit of the younger aspect of this team, they can make this happen very, very quick, similar to the way the Canadiens did, but you got to lock this in. You got to make sure that, you do this right and you fully embrace it. You can't risk going out here, giving up some of these opportunities that other teams are getting just to try and make the playoffs and get eliminated in the first round. It will not work. It will not happen. And I will go back to this one right here from Don Sweeney once again. From Connor Ryan, going from the tweet here. We'll have more coverage today, but it sure feels like Sweeney and the Bruins are finally waving the white flag on this year. Expect to see them listening to offers on several roster players before the deadline. And if the Bruins add, it's likely only going to be for players with term moving forward that they view as building blocks in 25, 26, and beyond. So it does look like the Bruins are going to be sellers. And finally, I'm excited to say this, embracing the tank. That's the way the Bruins need to be right now. And I think that's, not the way the players want to kind of look at things, but the way that injuries happen and the way that it would be to rebuild your defense from the ground up due to these injuries. It would not be cheap. It would really, put the Bruins in a bad spot overall if you're going for rental, giving up picks and whatnot. So I hope we do see the Bruins trade some of those players I just mentioned here on that list for some picks, for some young players, for some term, things the Bruins need. They can get. There's no way that they cannot go out here, make the team better by trading some of those players that are on expiring contracts, UFAs, RFAs, to get assets to make this team better for next year and years to come. But ultimately, as I mentioned with those few, the few moves and what could be made in those UFAs, there's one name that is likely going to be re-signed, and that is Brad Marchand. This is another tweet here coming from what we're looking at from Don Sweeney saying, other than Brad Marchand, Sweeney said the Bruins are likely won't be moving forward in negotiations with any other pending free agents. As for Marchand, we'll see. We'll have the conversation now that Four Nations is over. I'm going to sit down with Brad and his representatives to determine a clear path over the next 2 weeks, and that comes from Don Sweeney. So it sure seems like if any of these free agents right here, I know this is small, I do apologize, kind of threw this all together because this is some crazy stuff. When we're looking at these players here, there's a pretty big chance that we may not see any of these guys back with this team next season, apart from Brad Marchand. So let me know what you think about this. What did you think about the kind of quotes coming out here from Don Sweeney? This is something I feel like we could have kind of embraced a few weeks ago and, really got a head start on it. But now that we're actually fully seeing the extent of how things are playing out with the Hampus Lindholm injury being out for the season, Charlie McAvoy potentially also being out for the season, hopefully not. It may not seem like it, but if they want to rest him, make sure that shoulder fully heals, it could be an option, and embrace the tank, get a better pick than what they initially would have. It could be the ideal option for the Boston Bruins. Let me know what you think about all of this here in the comments below, but that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy it, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'm signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.